Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan and I hope you enjoy this story. Let me know in the comments what you think. Blackwater Lake had always been shrouded in mystery. Nestled deep within the heart of the dense, ancient Blackwood forest, it was a place whispered about by local legends. The lake's waters were a dark black, said to be cursed by the spirits of those who had met their untimely end in the depths. Fishermen who dared to cast their lines into Blackwater often returned with tales of strange shadows beneath the surface, whispers from the wind, and a feeling of being watched. Jake Thompson was a seasoned fisherman, known for his bravery and skill. He had heard the stories about Blackwater Lake, but dismissed them as mere superstitions. Jake was drawn to the challenge. The lake was rumored to be teeming with massive, elusive fish, and he was determined to be the one to catch them. On a crisp autumn morning, Jake set out with his gear, his trusty old boat, and his dog, Max. The forest was eerily silent as he made his way to the lake, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under his foot and the occasional rustle from the wildlife. As he reached the shore, a cold wind swept across the water, sending a chill down his spine. Jake pushed off from the shore and rowed to the center of the lake, the oars cutting through the dark water with an unsettling quietness. Max whined softly, sensing something was amiss. Jake casted his line, the lure disappearing into the depths. Hours passed with no bite, but Jake was patient. He watched the water, noticing the way it seemed to absorb the light, reflecting nothing back. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the lake, Jake felt a sudden, violent tug on his line. He gripped his rod, excitement and adrenaline coursing through him. The fight was on. The creature beneath the water was strong, pulling with an almost supernatural force. Jake struggled, muscles straining, but he was determined to not let go. After what felt like an eternity, the fish broke the surface, but it wasn't a fish. Jake's eyes widened in horror as he saw what he had hooked. A skeletal figure, its hollow eyes staring up at him, its bony fingers gripping the line. He screamed, dropping his rod and stumbling back. His dog Max barked furiously, but the apparition didn't move. It simply floated there, a ghastly reminder of the lake's dark history. Jake's heart pounded as he scrambled to untangle himself from the line. He managed to cut it loose, and the figure sank back into the depths, leaving only ripples in the water. Shaken, Jake decided to head back to shore. As he rowed, he felt eyes on him, the feeling of being watched intensifying with every stroke. Back on solid ground, Jake tried to shake off the encounter. He told himself it was just a trick of the light, his mind playing games, but the feeling of dread lingered. He decided to call it a day and return home. As he packed up his gear, he noticed something strange. His bait bucket was empty, the fish he had caught earlier gone. In their place were wet, muddy footprints leading back to the lake. Jake's blood ran cold. He hurriedly gathered his things and started the long trek back through the forest. The sun had set, and the woods were now cloaked in darkness. Shadows seemed to move in the corner of his eye, and the rustling of leaves sounded like whispers. Jake made it back to his cabin, his mind racing. He locked the doors, checking them twice, and made sure the windows were secure. Max, his dog, paced nervously, sensing his owner's unease. Jake sat by the fire, trying to calm his nerves. He sipped on a whiskey, hoping it would steady his shaking hands. As the night deepened, the wind outside picked up, howling through the trees. The cabin creaked and groaned, but Jake tried to ignore it. He was exhausted, his body aching from the day's events. He finally drifted off to sleep, but his dreams were filled with nightmares of skeletal figures and dark waters. Jake awoke with a startle in the middle of the night. The room was cold, his breath visible in the air. He heard a noise outside, a soft tapping on the window. Heart pounding, he grabbed his flashlight and edged toward the sound. He shined a light on the window, but there was nothing there, just darkness and the reflection of his own terrified face. He turned away, but the tapping started again. This time it was louder, more insistent. Jake gathered his courage and flung the window open. The cold night air rushed in, but there was no one there, just the empty, dark woods and the sound of the wind. The next morning, Jake decided to return to Blackwater Lake, determined to uncover the truth. He felt a strange compulsion, as if the lake itself was calling him back. He packed his gear and set off once more, Max following behind. As he reached the lake, the water was eerily calm. He rowed out to the center again, casting his line with a sense of foreboding. Hours passed, and as he just was about to give up, he felt that same violent tug on his line. This time, he was ready. He fought with all his might, determined to face whatever emerged from the depths. As the creature surfaced, Jake was prepared for the worst, but instead of a skeletal figure, it was a young woman. Her eyes widened with fear. She reached out to him, her voice a whisper on the wind. "Help me," she pleaded. Jake's heart ached with pity. He pulled her into the boat. Her body was cold and wet. The woman told Jake her story. She was Emily, a local who had disappeared years ago. She had been lured to the lake by the promise of a great catch, only to be pulled into its cursed depths of the spirits that haunted it. She had been trapped there, unable to move, her spirit bound to the lake. Jake listened, his heart heavy with sorrow. He knew he had to help her. He rowed back to shore, promising to find a way to break the curse. Emily stayed by his side, her presence both comforting and unsettling. Jake sought out the town's oldest resident, Miss Thorne, a woman rumored to be knowledgeable about the lake's dark history. She revealed that the curse could only be broken by returning something that had been taken from the lake, an item of great personal significance to the spirits trapped there. Jake returned to the lake, Emily guiding him. They searched the shore, and eventually Jake found a locket buried in the mud, its surface tarnished with age. Emily's eyes widened with recognition. "That's mine," she whispered. Jake took out the locket and rowed out to the center of the lake one last time. He held it above the water, saying a silent prayer, and dropped it into the depths. The water seemed to ripple and churn, as if acknowledging the return of the lost item. As the locket disappeared into the darkness, Emily's form began to fade. She looked at Jake, gratitude and relief in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You have freed us." Jake watched as she vanished. The weight of the curse lifted. The lake seemed to brighten, the water losing its inky blackness. The spirits were at peace. Jake rowed back to shore, the sense of dread replaced by a feeling of tranquility. He knew he had done the right thing, bringing closure to the restless spirits of Blackwater Lake. Jake never returned to Blackwater Lake. He shared his story with the townsfolk, who were both skeptical and awed. The lake remained a place of mystery, but the darkness that had once plagued it was gone. Jake continued to fish, but he never forgot the haunting experience at Blackwater Lake. It became a part of his legacy, a tale of courage, compassion, and the power of facing one's fears. And though the lake was no longer cursed, the memory of its dark past lingered in the hearts of those who dared to listen to the whispers of the forest and the haunting call of Blackwater Lake. Years passed, and Jake grew old. He would often sit by the fire, telling his story to anyone who would listen. One crisp autumn evening, as he looked out over the forest, he felt a familiar presence. It was his dog Max, long gone, seemed to appear beside him, his loyal companion in spirit. Jake smiled, knowing he wasn't alone. Blackwater Lake had found a new guardian, someone who understood its secrets and would protect its peace.